The dying girl was lying in her cell, and the guards threw her a piece of bread. They were worried that something bad might happen if someone found out about their actions, but still convinced themselves that nothing bad would happen if they gave her a piece of bread. She was suffering all this time anyway, so let at least something good happen to her. The prisoner wasted no time in taking the food, and crying, she began to greedily nibble on the bread. She could not believe that her life would end like this. She had lived all her life in an orphanage, and when she turned 3, her divine power appeared, and so everyone said that she was unique and unlike anything else. And one day, when the Duke of Yokotisi and the High Priest came to her for the first time, she thought she was very lucky, and since she was in an orphanage, the Duke's family soon adopted her. But she could not have imagined that after that her life would turn into a real hell. As soon as she arrived at the Duke's house, the girl was immediately placed in a magic circle, after which the child's power was sealed in a magic circle so that Princess Anotis could use this power. After the girl at the age of 3 came to the Duke's house every day for 100 years, the same thing happened. And since she hadn't learned the language as a girl of her age should, she didn't even have the opportunity to complain. But even so, she gradually lost the ability to speak, and even if she could speak, no one would listen to her anyway. Eventually, Princess Anotis became a great saint of the empire, thanks to the divine power she stole. And after it was taken away from heroine, she became an ordinary person. Tired of the endless imprisonment and inhuman treatment, the girl prayed to God not to leave her, after which she closed her eyes, and when she opened them, she did not recognize the place where she was now, and did not even feel the pain she had been suffering all the time, and in the palms of her small hands, divine power poured out, at which moment she realized that she had returned to the time when she was only 3 years old. The heroine immediately burst into tears, thanking God for this opportunity. Then she realized that she must not miss the new chance in a couple of days, or perhaps it could be tomorrow. The Duke and the High Priest who felt her divine power would arrive. In her past life, she had accidentally heard some things, like the Duke of Anotis, and the temple conspired with the aristocracy, and the imperial family conspired with the Duke of Becherweil. Then she could not understand much, but she always realized one thing clearly, namely that in order to survive, she had to go to the house of the Duke of Becherweil, because she did not want to die. So she came to the Duke's estate, and standing in front of the gate, she had no idea how she could get inside. But in a moment, it opened by itself, and suddenly a carriage with a man inside drove out, and the heroine was immediately convinced that this was the one she was looking for. The little girl knew she couldn't miss this opportunity, so she started screaming to attract attention, when suddenly she was stopped by a boy who was serving at the manor, and he assured her that he had no idea where she came from, but it was quite dangerous for a little girl like her to be here. The child immediately began to protest, asking to be let go, as she had to meet the owner of the estate immediately. The carriage stopped, and the girl was in the hands of the boy, begging for help, as she realized that if this continued, she would never get the opportunity to meet the Duke in person. Suddenly, the door to the carriage opened loudly, and a man gave a short order to bring the girl to him. Many people asked him for help, but it was the first time for him to see a little girl, and so he was even a little intrigued by how he could help the child. As she got closer, she saw a man who hastily ordered her to tell him what was going on and why she had come here at all. The heroine was a little scared. She knew that in order to survive, she needed to show him her skills, and since no one had ever taught her, her greetings were not very well-mannered and rather rude. The man immediately realized that he was already getting a headache from all this. The child noticed this, and pointing at him with her finger, said that she could cure him, after which she took his hand, and everything around him began to shine. With tears in her eyes, the child swore that she could treat him forever, just to help him survive. But suddenly something happened that she did not expect, and she noticed blood on her hands. It started coming from everywhere, from her nose, from her mouth, and it seemed that this power was not easy for her. Despite having divine power, it was still too early for her to fully control it. So it seemed that at the moment, this was the limit of her small body's capabilities, and therefore continuing this could lead to a disastrous situation. The heroine began to faint, and she could only hear voices calling for the Duke to bring a doctor here immediately. Everything went wrong. The girl should not have fainted. She had a duty to make a good impression on him, otherwise the past fate could come back to her, and that would mean that this chance was wasted. Later, she began to wake up on a soft bed, and the first thing she saw was Herzog asking the doctor why she hadn't woken up yet, and he assured her that she had lost consciousness due to exhaustion, but if she was given enough rest, she would wake up soon. In a moment, they noticed that the child began to wake up and immediately asked how she felt. Realizing the whole situation, the girl immediately stood up, thus puzzling the audience. Looking at the upset face of the owner, the heroine realized that even despite her attempt to cure him, it seemed that his head still hurt a lot. The girl asked in a serious tone to immediately give her the Duke's hand so that she could heal him again, and was immediately warned by the doctor not to use the divine power anymore, as she was not yet ready to use it. The heroine did not calm down despite the calls to stop using force. She argued that he needed immediate treatment, and therefore asked to be allowed to do it. But when she did not receive an answer, she despaired and began to cry again, assuring herself that she would not wreak havoc anymore, but would only stop his bleeding, and therefore she begged to be allowed to do it. Suddenly, the Duke fell to his knee and asked her to promise that she would not use her power anymore, and she hesitantly agreed, after which he gave her his hand and asked if she could see where he was hurt, and she confirmed it. The owner grimaced, and mentally assured her that if the church found out, they would search for her until they found her. The doctor said that it looked like she was afraid, and she was terrified, only apologizing, assuring that it was all because of her. The aristocrat, realizing this, immediately called an assistant named Shin, and ordered the orphanage to be liquidated. Later, the heroine was changed and tidied up, and then they began to feed her all kinds of cookies and other sweets. The maids were beside themselves with joy, and the girl, looking at their strange behavior, realized that the members of the Beckerville family were very strange. More recently, the Duke ordered the liquidation of the orphanage, which the heroine was of course very outraged about. She thought that after that he would try to steal her divine power, but it seems that she was wrong, and instead, he just fed her. She knew that they would soon meet again, the Duke of Enotis and the High Priest. They were not the kind of people who would give up so easily just because she now belonged to House Beckerville, and now her first goal was to prove her true worth, and leaving the dinner she was determined to go to her new father. There were two guys standing in front of the entrance to his office, and she asked them to let her in, even though she knew that they were unlikely to open the door to a little girl. But if she didn't try to enter, she still risked losing everything. Suddenly, behind their backs, he asked them what they were doing here, and they frightenedly began to explain that the lady had asked to be let in, after which he took her in his arms and looked at the guards threateningly, showing them with all his appearance where they had made a mistake, after which, under their sincere request for forgiveness, they went inside. There, the heroine asked again that she was allowed to heal him at that very moment, to which he reminded her of her promise not to use divine power, and now it was not something she should worry about. So she said that if she did not help him, she would not be able to stay here any longer. After her last statement, the man needed an explanation of what she meant by that. The heroine realized that they hadn't even had a proper conversation up to that point, and even if they did, she still wouldn't be able to find the right words, and it was all making her dizzy. After a moment, the child managed to squeeze out a few words, and assured him that if she did not cure him, he would drive her away and she would die. Gathering her strength, determined, the girl asked that in that case, let him hire her as a servant, and she would clean the house and wash the dishes. To her surprise, the Duke did not show any emotion, and as if not listening, he noticed that he still did not know her name, and so he asked her, to which he received an answer that the girl's name was number 12, to which he assured her that such a name did not suit her at all. The child was obviously upset by this statement, and therefore said that if she had no name, it meant that no one called her, and no one needed her. But if at least one person called her by name, she would be happy, and then he offered to choose a suitable name for her. After a little thought, the Duke named the girl Ione, and from now on he would call her that. Hearing this, the heroine could not hold back her tears. In her whole past life, she had never had a real name, and now she was just like a princess, and so she was very grateful for everything. Later, the girl fell asleep, and Shin entered the room, who was immediately asked what was going on with the temple, and so he began his report. They had known about the existence of the young lady for some time, and even more, they had already asked several times to meet her. But at the moment, as far as Duke Anotis was concerned, there was nothing special that was worthy of attention. In a moment, the master gave the order to prepare all the procedures for the completion of the adoption process of this girl, to which the assistant remarked that she was the owner of divine power, and it was unlikely that the temple would give up so easily, to which he received a statement that Selina Anotis had already been born, and so he asked how much he thought they could lose if all people knew that she did not have a drop of divine power. The guy confirmed this, said that 8 major business partners were already doing business with the Anotis family, and they also had a public opinion, and then received an order to do everything he heard, and immediately. Looking at the sleeping child, the man realized that their meeting was just an accident that fate had prepared for them. But still, he could not let her go, because she reminded him of someone very much. Very soon, they were at the table, waiting for breakfast. And when the servants brought the food, the Duke put the heroine on his lap and began to feed the girl. She was not sure if she could eat it all, but the Duke assured her that it was not only possible, but necessary for her to grow better and gain strength, and so she agreed. A moment later, they heard someone's footsteps outside the door, and at that moment it opened and a boy came out, whom the man immediately named Jerian, and he happily called him Dad. He was the youngest son of their family. When asked why he woke up so early, the maids assured him that yesterday he went to bed earlier than usual, and that's why he woke up now. The boy said he was hungry, and the heroine realized that it would be better not to disturb the Duke, and therefore it would be better for her to leave. But suddenly she heard Herzog ask his son to sit next to Ione, surprising her, and in a minute they were both sitting on her husband's lap, just like a real family. After a moment, he invited the children to introduce themselves to each other, and the girl did so first, giving the name she had recently received, and the boy was Jerian. And after they had met, the man offered to wish each other a pleasant meal. A moment later he asked how old the boy was, to which he cheerfully assured him that he was already 2 years old, and when it was the girl's turn, she said she was already 3. A moment later, the father told his son that Ione, now his older sister, had shocked the girl, as she no longer understood her status. As he was finishing up, an assistant came into the room and said that the Duke had to go to the Emperor's palace immediately, and he could not be late, and the master agreed, and the heroine saw that his head was starting to hurt again, so she said so. Stroking the child's head, the aristocrat asked if she still remembered her promise, and she confirmed that she would not use divine power, and the man was glad to hear that, and so he assured her that he would return soon, and there was nothing to worry about, and so they left the dining room. The heroine was left alone in the room with her new brother, and he started to cheerfully call her sister, and she heard this and asked him to call her Ione, because she was not really the Duke's daughter, but a commoner. But the boy did not understand what the problem was, and with a proud expression on his face, said that he did not care, because his father said that she was now his big sister. Having finished this, he turned to the maid and told her that they would go to the garden with his new sister, to which she accepted without hesitation, adding that she would make them dessert, and they would be able to eat in the garden, after which he cheerfully pulled the girl along, and she could not understand why they should do something new, because there was food for 8 people at least. Outside, a table was already waiting for them, with a variety of food, and the heroine had some difficulty climbing onto a chair that was much higher than her, and then the maid, stretching out her hands, offered her help, to which the girl asked not to do so, because in this case she would get her hands dirty. The woman was touched by such care, and so she strongly assured her that everything was fine, and even if she got them dirty, she could always just wash them. Resigned to this decision, the heroine agreed, and apologizing, she climbed into the maid's arms and then onto the chair. The boy was happy that she was now sitting on the chair just like he was, and so he decided to reward her for her work. And so he took a piece of pie and handed it to the girl, who thanked him, and as soon as she was distracted for a moment, the pie disappeared, and as it turned out, the child ate it herself. And in this situation, she decided to give him her piece of pie, assuring him that it was a reward from her. The boy was delighted with such kindness, and when he tasted it, he was very embarrassed. And then the maid offered another cake, assuring her that they were also very tasty. And so the girl tasted it hesitantly, and everyone present waited for her reaction. And from this taste, she flew somewhere far away in her head, where there was nothing but pleasure. It was the first time in her life that she had ever tasted something so delicious, and so she was very happy. The maid saw the expression on the young lady's face and decided to offer other dishes, but the heroine asked them to stop, as they were offering a lot of things, and she simply could not fit everything in. A moment later, she heard an unpleasant and angry voice claiming to have found her. Turning around, she realized by the shape of the priests that they were priests, and they grabbed her, saying that they had been looking for her for a long time, and now she would go with them. No matter how miserable she was, the priest would find out about her sooner or later, and if she opposed the will of the god, he would punish her. The girl tried to escape with all her might, but it was all in vain. Looking at the women, she realized that they were just maids, and she was nothing to them, so she should not expect any help from them. It was then that she realized that there was no choice but to get rid of them with her divine power, and at that moment the sword touched the priests' necks. The Duke returned, and he was angry, and he wanted to know what they were doing to his daughter. The thief claimed that he did not understand what he was talking about, and then the aristocrat repeated his question, namely, what they had just tried to do with his daughter, to which he assured that, if he was not mistaken, this family had never had daughters. And then the Duke ordered Shin to explain, and the boy, presenting the document, said that it was an order from the emperor approving the adoption of this child. But it seems that the guests were not going to be satisfied with that, and asked in surprise how it could be that the priority in adopting girls with divine powers was given to the duchy and not to the temple. The boy claimed that for the first time in 13 years, there was a woman with divine powers, not including the Duchess of Enotis, and that's why the temple needed this girl. And at this point, in a serious tone, the Duke said that in other words, they ignored the emperor's order and still considered this girl an orphan. After a moment, the Duke ordered to find out how these priests had entered his house, and then ignoring their presence, he approached the frightened girl, asking if she was okay, and after a moment adding that she could now call him father, not Duke, because from that day on, they, Ione, were an official member of the Beckerwile family. The heroine did not know why it all happened and wanted to find out, to which the new father assured her that it would not be easy to answer this question, and therefore asked her to consider it a response to her request for help. The child was horrified by the fact that she now had a family and probably became a member of the Duke's family, and at the same moment the man gently hugged his daughter, who no longer had to be afraid, no longer had to starve and suffer endlessly. She just wanted to live, wanted to be treated as a real person, not a used thing. Some time passed, and a new dress was found for the girl, in honor of which the assistant did not forget to praise her. He said that the Duke had been gone for some time, but he would return soon if we just waited a little longer. Nothing has changed since she became the Duke's daughter. She was treated well from the very beginning and still is. She has never been asked to clean the room or wash the dishes, and if anything has changed, she was told that all members of the ducal family of Beckerwile did not have to bow to the emperor. They were such a respectable family, and that is why they asked not to be called so respectfully. The child was sitting on the bench, trying to comprehend everything she had just heard, when she suddenly heard a voice gently asking if she was still awake, and turned around to see Herzog, who reminded her that it was time to start calling him Dad. Putting the child on her lap, she claimed that he had a headache again, and so she asked to be allowed to heal him, which led the man to remind her that they had talked about divine power, assuring her that his headache would go away if she removed all the documents, and they were certainly not worth his precious daughter bleeding again. After a moment, he added that if she used her power again without being properly prepared, she would faint, to which he was resolutely ready. But the man himself could not say so, and besides, it was time for the little girls to go to bed, and at that very moment, the maid escorted her to bed. The divine power was like magic or sword skills. The more you practiced, the better you got, and now she was doing just that at the bedside, convinced that she had to heal the Duke, but she must not bleed. But no matter how hard she tried, in a moment the strength would disappear, and she would be covered in sweat. It was not enough. And then she would create it anew through willpower, then rejoice in her success. But in a moment, she felt something strange, namely that her body became very hot for some reason. The next morning, the whole family was at the bedside of the sick woman. The boy was upset about it, and kept asking his father when his sister would be healthy, but no one had an answer. And then he said that they wanted to eat a new cake together. And then the father supported his son, assuring him that when she got better, they would all eat a new cake together. Suddenly she began to come to, and immediately noticed Herzog by her side. He apologized for waking her up, and asked her to sleep a little more, as she still looked like she was very sick, to which the child said that she was very cold, and at the same time, pleasant. Returning to her later, the father checked on his child's condition again, and breathing a sigh of relief, realized that the disease seemed to be receding from her, and a moment later heard her words, where she apologized, assuring him that it was all her fault. The man could not understand what had happened, and the heroine continued to speak in her sleep, and in a moment asked the Duke not to beat her, thus shocking the master, who was nearby and very intrigued by this. The next day, the girl was already being fed medicine, which made her cringe because it was bitter, and the maid kept supporting her, assuring her that she understood how bitter it was. But she still wanted to be healthy, and when she drank all the bitter medicine, she was treated to a candy. The reason why the Duke let Ione into his carriage that night was because of her white hair and eyes, which reminded him of his long-dead daughter. The girl tried to use divine power to heal the Duke, and she seemed to him to be exactly the kind of value that needed to be protected. He didn't seem like the kind of person who would care about things more than a child who was bleeding. And this situation, as well as the girl's desire, made him feel sincerely remorseful and lost. But even so, the main reason he adopted her was for political purposes because she was a child with divine powers. Moreover, when the country's elite finds out that the Beckerville family has a child, the Duke will take the same place in the political arena as Duke Enotis. But after the child fell ill, all attention was focused on her, and he instinctively realized that the Duke she spoke of in her dream was not him. Later, he asked if his assistant had found out anything about the case, to which he assured that the young lady and the Duke of Enotis had never met. They had helped the orphanage where she grew up many times, and she simply could not have a bad dream with an unknown Duke. The owner ordered to continue the investigation and even expand the scope of interest to other countries, and when Shin heard this, he apologized and said that it made no sense, since according to the documents she had been growing up in that orphanage since the age of 1. As for what happened before that, the director of the orphanage told us that the daughter of a deceased high-ranking aristocratic family was raped, and the culprit was the second son of the Palmontov family. This information made the man angry, and he ordered them to pay the necessary attention and to make sure that their family went bankrupt and became a dead count's family, as they could not allow them to continue to commit such crimes. Now, my father realized that she had indeed said the word Duke, but he did not know who she meant and where he needed to start the search. Instead of the orphan number 12, she received a real name, Ione, and not just any name, but Ione Beckerville. And from the moment she entered the Herzog house, her life would never be the same again, and she was very happy about it. From the very beginning of the day, she had been secretly practicing divine power, and the girl did not really understand how to learn properly. She recalled that when the Duchess of Enotis stole her power, she had gotten quite good at it. And then she began to think that she had no talent, when suddenly she heard a voice that said she shouldn't give up. This voice scared the girl, but it turned out to be just a maid who brought sweets. And now she wondered why the lady was so sweaty and scared, and she received an answer that the heroine was exercising. She didn't see anything wrong with doing sports, as long as she didn't overexert herself, and so she suggested that they finish it so that they could go to the shower and then to Herzog. After that, Jesse took her to see the Duke, who sat the girl on his lap and went about his business. And when he had a visitor, he asked the child if she was bored looking at all these documents, and she assured him that the Duke's handwriting was very beautiful and a pleasure to look at. The man confirmed this, and then asked if he could pat her on the head. The girl was confused by this suddenness, so she asked him what he meant, and then he looked at her with a sterner look, and at that moment the Duke himself looked angrily at the man, so that he had to apologize and then hurriedly leave the office. Afterwards, the father turned to the child and told him that if he ever felt that someone was stroking his head without his permission, he should immediately bite his hand with all his strength and not be afraid of the consequences. While they were spending time like that, Jerian came in, and when he saw his family, he was very happy, running up to hug his sister and then going to eat, and afterwards they had an afternoon nap, and after waking up, she practiced using divine power again. During the day, she spent time with Jerion again, and all she did was play with him on the street. They were very fun days, and in her stupidity, she thought that such unemployed days would go on forever. The next morning, what she was so afraid of happened. She met a man in the morning and recognized him as the Duke of Anotis, and it scared her very much. So when her father came, she did just that, hid behind him. The guest assured him that he had no idea that the child would be so shy, to which the owner said that this had nothing to do with him, which made him pretend to be embarrassed, and assured him that he himself had always said that one should speak to elders in a manner that was more appropriate, but that would come later, and right now, he addressed the girl and assured her that she should receive the necessary education. And she immediately remembered how cruel he had been in his past life, and this frightened her even more, and in a moment the guest assured her that he had an idea, namely that it would be nice to introduce their girls, as he himself would be happy if children with divine powers were friends. The father said that Ione would not like this idea, to which the guest, heading for the exit, asked to think about his words anyway, because they made sense, and when asked where he was going, the man assured that he had a lot of things to do, and therefore he had to go, and in parting he gave everyone a strange look, assuring them that they would meet again. The frightened heroine looked after him, and could not understand what he was doing here, and then the voice of her father cut through her thoughts, who had a very important question, namely, he had to know if the girl had met the Duke of Anotis before. The Duke repeated his question, to which the child nervously assured him that it was their first meeting. But she could not hide her trepidation, and then the man patted her head, thus calming her down, and then suggested that they go play with Jerian. And in a moment, an assistant appeared and said that the merchants invited by the Duke had already arrived, and then they went together to check what the merchants had, and there were many children's dresses, and then he said that she could choose what she liked. The heroine said that all the dresses were very beautiful, and then the father seriously considered buying them all. The girl quickly convinced him that it was not worth it, and then he gave her a choice. And without hesitation, the girl pointed to a modest green dress, to which the father remarked that in the future she might not like to go shopping. In a moment, the maid came and said that Jerian was already here, and when he appeared, he immediately went to his sister, asking what she was doing, and when he heard that she was choosing a dress, he offered his help, to which the heroine readily agreed. He started touching everything he saw, and with a sincere smile took 2 dresses, assured that they were all very beautiful. The heroine, looking at all this, decided that it would be okay if Jerian wanted to try them on, and therefore said that she thought they would suit him, to which the puzzled boy said that they were not for him, and he was choosing for his sister. Looking at the mountain of gifts, the child was uncomfortable, and the boy got upset, asking if she didn't like it, which is why his sister had to calm him down. And then the father said that the final decision would be up to Ione in any case. When she saw the sword in the midst of expensive jewelry and beautiful dresses, she curiously went to take a closer look, and it suddenly changed its shape and became smaller, just perfect for the person who was going to use it. And the man immediately recognized it as a magic sword. The merchant who sold it corrected the Duke, assuring him that it was a holy sword, and he had received it in another country. And he knew only that it had to choose its own master. But this was the first time he had seen it shrink like that. The Duke, seeing how interested the girl was, said he was buying it, and the seller assured him that out of respect for him, he would give it away for free. As he had already said, the sword chose its own owner, and so it was returned many times. The heroine, meanwhile, was mesmerized by this sword, as if it was calling her to it, closer and closer, and as soon as she was about to touch it, Her father took it and ordered her not to touch the sword blade unnecessarily. After that, he turned to the seller, asking if he had any sheaths, and the merchant confirmed this, adding that they would not fit him now, as the sheaths were made to order, and now they would be too big for him. And then the man ordered a new order. And so, he was ready to give it to the child, after the sheath was made, and he did not want to hear any no. And then the heroine had no choice but to turn on her charm, and so she sweetly assured him that she would not touch the blade, and she promised. It was difficult to resist, and then father said that he would order them to be ready as soon as possible, giving a hint to a nearby merchant, who humbly agreed. Later, the maid noticed this and asked if she liked the weapon so much, and after receiving confirmation, she said that it was quite heavy, and therefore offered to give it to her for now, but she got a firm no, and then she left to bring a new cake. Left alone, the girl began to hear a voice asking to be let out, and he could not get out, and in a moment a cat appeared from the sword. He greeted her, calling her mistress, and introduced himself as Dorian, the divine beast. The surprised child only managed to call him a cat, which led him to repeat that he was a divine beast, and then he began to tell him that it had been a long time since he had dealt with such a powerful divine force, and he had absorbed a lot of it then, and apparently these actions had puzzled her, for which he now apologized. The shocked child didn't know what to say, and then the cat noticed that he had already introduced himself, but still didn't know her name, so she hastily told him that she was Ione Beckervile, after which the cat assured him that it was a very cute name, and at that moment, he said that because of his joy, he had completely forgotten to explain to her he was a divine beast living in one of the 5 holy worlds, Dorian, and now he wanted to make a contract with the heroine. There are only 5 holy objects in the whole world, and in each of them live divine beasts, each of them looking for a suitable owner with whom to conclude a contract. They feed on divine power to fill it in a holy object, and a holy object without a master was no different from an ordinary thing. And now, he claimed, if she signed a contract with him, she would be able to wield the magic of the earth, if she needed it, of course. And then, the child asked if she could become stronger if she signed this contract. And having received a positive answer, she was assured that the main wish was to become stronger. And in this case, she could become many times stronger. She was the daughter of the Duke, and also the older sister of Geryon. And if she became stronger, she could stay with them forever and be able to protect them. The heroine was determined to conclude the necessary contract, and then the beast asked her to hold out her hand, and as soon as their body parts touched, everything around her was illuminated with a bright light. When she finished, the cat said that he felt the power of fire in her, and asked if she had come across any other holy objects, to which she said that nothing like that had happened, which made the beast even more surprised, since he could definitely feel the power of fire in her, and therefore asked if she had seen anyone wearing red earrings. And then she remembered that in her past life, she had seen them. The Duchess of Anotis had worn them, but that was in her past life. In this life, they had never even met. And now she had even more questions. Eventually, the heroine remembered that they were worn by the Duchess of Anotis, and so she decided to tell her new friend, before asking if he could keep a secret, and then claimed that he had seen them before she returned to her 3-year-old self. After hearing everything, the animal said that they were evil people, and if they really had the red earrings with the divine beast, he hoped that they would at least not harm anyone. There were many different ways to transfer divine power, and he was sure that they had deliberately chosen the most dangerous one in order to steal her power. They wanted to do it as quickly as possible, regardless of her feelings. Having finished, the beast allowed himself to repeat that at the moment her divine power was unrivaled, but still her body was too young, and although she had trained diligently, that was not the point. And then the animal asked how many years had passed since her divine power had been taken away and she had stopped feeling it. And the heroine said that it was when she was 13, and now she was only 3, which meant that it would take 10 years to fill this gap in her sense of divine power, due to the long lack of practice. The girl was upset to hear this. She wanted to stay here, and for that she needed to heal the Duke and prove her worth. Her thoughts were interrupted by her new companion, who assured her that if it worried her, she could always share it, because after all, they had a contract. He said that she should always remember that she is the first person in the last 200 years to have a contract with him, a divine beast. And if she tells the Duke about it, the very fact that their contract is present will increase this value that she thinks about. The child was eager to tell everything as soon as possible, and the maid brought dessert, but it was already late, and the girl said she had to go to the Duke, and the maid agreed to take her to him. Walking down the corridor, the animal was hanging on Heroine's shoulder, and on the way he warned her that at the moment he was using a technique to prevent her from overdoing it with the use of divine power. Now he was in a spiritual form, and only she, other people who had signed the contract, and other animals could see him. But if he came out of the spiritual form, other people would be able to see him. This meant that he did it because his exit from the spiritual form uses a lot of its power, and it was true that for the animal to appear before the Duke, he would need to use its divine power. But there was nothing to worry about, because nothing bad could happen while it was under his control. When she went inside, she found her husband at work, but he left her immediately when he noticed his daughter, and taking her in his arms, he said that she was later than usual today. The girl quietly said that she had something to tell him, and then she was asked in his ear to keep it a secret, and then she told him that she had recently signed a contract with a divine beast, and her father expectedly did not believe her, and assured her that she had not yet recovered from the disease, so she needed to rest more. And at that moment he materialized, claimed that she was fine, and the girl was not deceiving him, and at that moment she introduced him as a new friend, Dorian. He in turn climbed on the table and assured her that she should not worry about her body, as he was taking care of her as needed, and he was a beast of the earth who lived in a holy sword, one of the 5 holy objects. Being shocked by this for a moment, the man pulled himself together and also introduced himself in response, and at the same moment asked if her body would be fine, to which the beast assured that he was now making adjustments in some aspects, and could definitely assure that she was already fine. At this point, the girl grabbed onto the Duke's shirt tighter and asked if she had finally gained value, and hearing this, the master smiled, and stroking her assured her that Ione, every time she said things that surprised him, and then he asked if she still remembered their promise, to which she confirmed that she should not use divine power. Dorian was watching the whole time, and he saw for himself that the man's headache had started to hurt again. And on his way back, he said that he was very glad that Ione was a very smart and good girl, because at first he thought that she wanted to talk about treating the Duke again, to which she assured him that the beast would have refused anyway, so there was no need. The friend was happy to hear this, as many children do not listen to what they are told, and he immediately climbed on top of her head and assured her that she should wait a little longer, and if she trained hard with him, getting rid of the black smoke inside her head would not be a problem, which she was overjoyed to hear. The Duke said that she was too young to take Dorian out of his spiritual state and carry him everywhere with her, and so he asked that she never tell anyone about his existence, and so she kept quiet. And now 2 children stood in front of the Duke, one of whom claimed that they had quarreled. Jerian assured him that his sister had some secrets, and he really wanted to see them, and when he did not get what he wanted, he began to cry, assuring her that she would not hate him. It was impossible to watch. The heroine could no longer see Jerian's crying face, and so she decided to tell him everything, the whole truth. And looking at her father, she received an approving nod, and so she told him everything. Hearing this, the child was shocked, and then the father told her not to tell anyone about it, as it was a very big secret, and if anyone found out about it, Ione might get hurt. And then he asked to see it, at least for a minute, and then the girl agreed to try it, but he resisted the urge, and taking her by the hand, he led her to play. At that moment, Shin was in the room, and realizing that all the young members of the Duke's family had gone to play, he assured them that he had found the book they had asked him for, and studied all the useful information. Dorian is one of the 5 divine beasts. The young lady signed a contract with him. He seemed quite calm, so you could trust him. But according to the book, the last contract with him was signed more than 400 years ago. The owner was surprised that everyone began to trust him, and then he asked if there were any bad divine beasts among the other divine beasts. And then the assistant assured him that one was probably hostile to humans, and it was a beast of fire, which seemed to be found in red gemstone earrings. Having received the necessary information, the Duke ordered them to make sure that all the red earrings that Ione could see were thrown away while watching the children play. He understood that in order to prevent the information that the girl had signed a contract with the divine beast from getting out, it was necessary to keep the servants from knowing anything. There were 5 divine beasts in total. 4 of them were on the side of good, and only 1 on the side of evil. His name was Ignis, and he possessed the element of fire, Nadia, nature, Erone, water, canoe, darkness. Now the cat was explaining that the holy object in which Ignis lived was a pair of red earrings that she had seen in her past life, and the thing was that he didn't like people. And if the girl who owned the earrings had already learned about the existence of a spirit inside them, then the contract would probably have been signed by now, but he didn't think they had. Divine magic is the magic of creation, and one must learn to master it in order to control it. The girl did not really understand what was going on, so the beast had to explain everything, and having divine power did not mean being able to use it. If she didn't know how to use it properly, she had no choice but to start learning. It wasn't enough to be born with power, she had to learn everything. And then she apologized, to which Dorian assured her that he had already told her that there was no shame in not knowing it. And as he assessed her with his eyes, he realized that she needed someone to teach her everything, and therefore she needed to ask the Duke. Even though she said she would like to learn everything, Shin was a very busy man, as his father had said that they should choose a person they could trust completely, and he was his assistant. The girl noticed that he had circles under his eyes, to which he assured her that it was because he had taken on too many things lately. But she should not have worried about him, as he had volunteered because teaching brought him joy. At the beginning of the lesson, he said that the longer she studied languages, the better she would begin to understand them. The main thing was to take her time, so he wanted to teach her the basics of the imperial language, and so she diligently studied everything she was told. At the end of the lesson, the teacher noticed that she was learning very quickly. Not much time had passed, and she had already memorized half of the letters of the alphabet. And it was not easy to learn such a lot of material on the first day. Dorian added that she would soon start learning difficult words, and he thought she would be able to learn everything quickly as well. At night, the girl dreamed of a dark figure approaching ominously, and as soon as they were face to face, the heroine woke up terrified and sweating. The beast asked what happened, and then the girl assured him that she had a terrible dream. The silhouette was very similar to a person, somewhat, but this creature was not a person, just a shadow. The beast confirmed that it could really scare anyone, and therefore offered to sit by her until the girl fell asleep, to which he received a quiet consent. Previously, the heroine would come to the Duke's office to see how he works with documents, but now she did it for a completely different reason, namely to tell him what she learned during today's lesson with Shin. If she told everything well, the Duke would praise her and put a big, beautiful stamp on it, which meant nothing to a large extent, but she still felt very pleased when they accumulated. During one of these days, a guest who came for work issues noticed that the Founders' Day was coming up, and they could go there with the whole family, even if they were still young. Attending such events would be a good experience for them, and besides, aristocrats who decided to adopt a child were criticized, so this holiday is a great opportunity to introduce their new. At this point, the Duke interrupted him and looked at him angrily, asking if he was exceeding his authority, which is why he had to apologize, and the girl wondered what the founding holiday was, and her father explained that it was the day when their empire was founded, the birthday of the empire. Dorian assured her that he hadn't been to such national holidays for a long time. He and his last owner used to have fun there, and then the girl sadly said that she understood. Seeing her reaction, her father asked her if she was interested, to which she hesitantly agreed, and then he said that they would go there anyway. The holiday would last 7 days, and they would go there on the 3rd day, when the most brilliant events and entertainment would be held. But he still had to remind her of the promise, and the heroine recounted all these words, that she should not use divine power and hide the divine beast, and thirdly, she should call Jerian accordingly, since he was her younger brother after all, and most importantly, he wanted the girl to call him accordingly, to call him Dad. All his friends said that the child needed time, and he understood, so he was ready to wait. But he didn't think he could listen to her calling him Duke for a long time, because he was impatient by nature. After all, she was his daughter, his family, and then the man recalled how she had asked for help the first time they met, and that was his positive response to that, and she was now Ione Beckerwile. And so, to summarize, he asked who he was, and then the child said the word Dad uncertainly, and that meant that they could now fully enjoy the holiday. The fireworks were held at the beginning and end of the Founder's holiday, and on the first day they watched it with Jerian, and he kept laughing when she stopped calling him Mr. and just called him by his first name, and if she had known he would be so happy about it, she would have started calling him that earlier. The father also gave them a knight to accompany them. At first, she thought it was cool, but then it started to scare her a little. When they met, she introduced herself as Elena Pless and assured them that from that day on, she would accompany the heroine. The girl introduced herself in return and then asked where her brother was, to which the woman assured her that the young gentleman was too attached to his maid. After which she approached and whispered in her ear that she already knew about the existence of the divine beast. In any case, she seemed like a good person, and this fact calmed the heroine down. Now the brother asked if there was anything else she would like to see, but she didn't know. So she asked Jerian what he would like to see, and he assured her that he would like to see his older brother swing a sword, as it would be very cool. And then she remembered that in her past life, she had already heard about the eldest son of the Duke Becherville family. There were gossips that he was a handsome boy with a calm disposition, but at the same time, Jerian considered his brother a good and kind person, and now the girl wondered how he would treat her. In her past life, she fully experienced the feeling when one person treats others well, and she is the only one who does not. Later, it was time to practice using the power, and Dorian asked her to concentrate, not to think about seeing a sphere. Instead, a circle would be enough for a start. But in the end, nothing happened, and the girl was tortured by this, to which the beast tried to encourage her, assuring her that something rarely works out the first time, and not to worry, as it would definitely work out over time. Elena, who was nearby at the time, asked her if she was using divine power, and after receiving confirmation, reminded her that the child had promised the Duke not to use it, but it turned out that he allowed it if the process was controlled by Dorian. In this case, the knight suggested that we end it there, and although the heroine assured that she had done nothing wrong, the woman said that if she had really done nothing, she would not have sweated so much, as sweat is a reflection of her efforts from the outside, and if there was so much of it, one could only imagine what was happening inside at that moment. Accepting this, the heroine asked Elena if she had often been to the Founder's Day, and she confirmed this, adding that she had loved it. It was very beautiful, with moving dolls and giant balloons. Many traders came there, and you could buy things that had never been available in the Empire, and there were acrobats and trained animals. Artists performed many shows, and in general, the feeling was wonderful. The heroine liked the story, and then she asked Dorian what he thought about it, and after a moment he said that he didn't even know what he could say about it. Something had definitely changed since the last time, because he was at the celebration many years ago, but what he remembered was that he definitely had fun. Before the trip, the maid saw the child off, asking her to be careful and not to get hurt, and not to stray far from Miss Elena, who may have been a talented woman and could be relied on. But the maid wanted to go with them, too, for safety's sake. Ione assured me that there was nothing to worry about, because she still needed to heal her dad and play with her brother, and so she would definitely be careful. She could promise that, and at that moment, the Duke himself appeared. The child, throwing himself into his arms, asked why Jerian was not with him, and he assured him that the boy had gone to bed late last night and had not yet woken up. But the heroine was not worried. She wanted him to sleep well, and was sure that he would definitely come to them as soon as he woke up. They got into a carriage, and after a short ride, the girl began to see decorated streets and strange animals. And when she saw an elephant, she said that it was very big. The Duke already wanted to buy it, but the child refused, assuring him that it was big and beautiful, but when it was close, it became scary. Later, one of the saleswomen came up to them and asked if she was a noble lady, handed the girl cookies, and she tasted them and said they were very tasty. And her father explained that the noble color of the imperial family was red, and that's why there were many red items. Suddenly, the Duke felt a strange dark aura, and this surprised him. Noticing this reaction, Ione asked what was wrong with him, to which he hastily began to make excuses, as if he saw Gerion's favorite food, that he loves cookies, and it is a pity that he is not here today. After that, Dorian got off the man's shoulder and assured him that he wanted to go for a walk to his favorite place, so they would have to have fun without him, and as he left them, the girl noticed that he seemed to prefer being alone. Suddenly, Gerion appeared, and with a happy expression on his face, he called his sister and suggested that they go out and have fun. And then she suggested that they go to her older brother. So they asked their father where he was, and he said that he had a match. He was going to hold a sword fight today, and it scared the heroine a little bit because she was afraid that someone might get hurt. And so the man assured her that nothing terrible could happen, because there is always a priest there. So wounds after the fight are always healed. And in this case, he suggested that they go together to watch. Together, they went to the fighting arena, and the host just started to greet everyone, after which he confirmed that all the knights who were supposed to participate in the competition had just finished training, and therefore he was honored to declare the tournament open. Gerion recognized one of the fighters as his brother, and the fight began. His opponent was approaching decisively, ready to strike, and in a moment, his sword was in the air, and the host announced that the winner of this fight was Kaiden Beckerweil. While they were watching the spectacle, Dorian appeared and assured her that she could use a sword and that she should ask her father to teach her fencing when they returned home. The hostess assured him that she would not mind, but it was not the kind of thing that ladies of high society should do. And then the beast said that people show their best side when they do things they like, and therefore he should ask the Duke, and if he sees a sincere desire, he should think about it. Meanwhile, the next fight began, and Kaiden, this time, was on the attack. He quickly and decisively struck blows that the opponent had a hard time running away from. But in the end, the host announced that the winner of this round was Kaiden Beckerweil. When the boy finished, he won the tournament, and then his father decided that it was time for them to go downstairs to him. Gerion immediately ran up to his brother, congratulating him, and the girl hid behind her father, realizing that she was not yet mentally ready for this. Seeing this fear, the Duke asked her to come out and introduce herself, and the girl, still frightened, introduced herself to him, and he, in turn, took her in his arms without saying a word, which filled her with fear even more, as she did not know what he would do now, and whether he could throw her out right now. In a moment, the father took the child away, and Gerion accused the man of scaring his sister, and he in turn simply asked why, because the father was bigger than him. So why was she scared? To which the man gently explained that this was the difference between people, and she was already used to him, and that's why she hugged him. She was worried that Gerion would be disappointed in her because she wouldn't be able to stay with her older brother for long, but her worries quickly disappeared, and as she was given more and more gifts, and her brother tried to cheer her up all the time, instead of being disappointed, she was just glad that they could continue to have a good time. Suddenly, her attention was drawn to one of the vendors holding the event, who was loudly announcing a competition, namely a one-on-one battle between men, and the winner would receive a rare bracelet, so she shouldn't miss this chance. The girl seemed to be fascinated by that bracelet and started walking towards it as if enchanted. But the father stopped the child in time, and at that moment Dorian also intervened, and he said that it would be critical if she lost even more divine power. He told her to listen to his voice in her head, and as soon as she put on that bracelet, the essence that was in it would immediately wake up and begin to quickly devour her divine power. This bracelet is a holy object of Nadia, and it is like a flower, seducing people who look at it. And the girl was fooled by the power of the bracelet's charm. But fortunately, they stopped her in time and everything will be fine. But Nadia was the youngest among them, the divine beasts, and by human standards, she was the same age as the heroine. Most likely she felt her qualitative divine power, and that's why she reacted like that, trying to seduce her. The Duke asked if she wanted this bracelet, to which she agreed. He could buy her as many bracelets as she wanted, but she wanted this one. Dorian continued to warn her of the danger, and to stop fooling herself. A holy object is a simple thing, so she should not give in to temptation, no matter what is inside, as her divine power was still not healed after their last contract, and therefore Nadia was still a danger to her. The child, upset, said that she was very lonely, and then the father, full of determination, ordered Elena to look after the children, and the heroine, seeing him off, asked him not to get hurt, to which he smilingly assured her that there was nothing to worry about, and that he would definitely get her this bracelet. It was over quickly, and her father's opponent was lying on the ground, unable to continue the fight, after which the girl was handed the coveted bracelet, and Elena reminded her that she shouldn't have worried, as Pan was even more outstanding than Caden in his youth. But the happiness did not last long, and the man took the object from the girl, assured her that he would keep it for some time, and Dorian, in turn, reminded her not to be fooled by the power of the bracelet's charm. The heroine assured that nothing bad happened in the end, to which the furious Dorian said that it was only because he had to make a lot of effort to suppress Nadia's manifestation. Otherwise, she would have already sucked out all her power. After that, they went home, and there, the girl noticed that Dorian looked a little stranger than usual, to which he said that Nadia had already stolen quite a bit of Ioni's divine power. After a moment, the beast began to explain that the previous divine beast of the natural element had died not long ago, and since a new beast, Nadia, had immediately appeared after its birth, it had never had another master. In other words, it was simply immature. When asked how Ione was doing, he assured her that she just needed to rest and not overwork, and then tomorrow she might be fine. The Duke said that the fact that she had already received her holy item did not mean that she had to sign a new contract, which Dorian confirmed, adding that Nadia seemed to be very eager to subdue her first master, so he might have to suppress her a little bit using Ione's powers. Hearing this, the girl defiantly asked what would happen if she did sign a contract with it, and the cat said that in all of history, there had never been a case when a child could sign a contract with a pair of divine animals at once. But Ione's divine power was so great, pure, and potential that one day, the day would surely come when she would be able to contract 5 divine beasts at once. But now her physical growth could not catch up with her enormous divine development, and so her vessel was on the verge of bursting. In such a situation, it was dangerous to conclude a contract with Nadia, as she did not yet fully understand the terms of the contract. With another divine beast, it was still possible, but with her, hardly, in other words, it was dangerous, so she should have slept some more. The girl could not calm down, and then her father intervened, saying that she would only hurt herself, and if she did not take care of herself, she should at least think about others, to which she continued to say that she could handle it. The Duke assured her that she didn't have to always accept danger. She was still small now, but she would grow up soon, so she should wait another 5 years, and then they would raise this question again. Dorian supported this idea, adding that it was nothing for a divine beast to sleep for 5 years. He himself had slept for hundreds of years before he met her, so these years would fly by unnoticed. Suddenly, he noticed that something began to sprout from the ground behind the girl, but it was too late, and the roots instantly wrapped around the girl in a kind of cocoon, preventing anyone from entering. Left inside alone with the bracelet, she heard a voice claiming that it had finally met her. The bracelet was hanging in the air, and there was a bright light around it, and it asked her to tell it her name. The girl introduced herself to her, and then the subject ordered her to quickly say her own name. The heroine realized that her dad and Dorian did not allow her to make this contract, but she must have been sad and lonely for so long being locked in the bracelet. She was all alone, and had no one to talk to, and so she decided that it would be okay if she said her name to support her. The heroine called out aloud the name Nadia, and everything around her shone with even more light, and the joyful beast declared that she had finally found her master. In a minute, everything around her disappeared, and the girl was free, but she was no longer able to even stand up. Later, she could only hear her 2 divine beasts arguing. Dorian was ordering her to disappear, but she did not understand how to do it, so she asked him to explain quickly how to do it, otherwise Ione could really get hurt. Dorian began to explain that it was necessary to redirect the current flow of her divine power back, as she had already absorbed enough, and half of what she had already absorbed needed to be returned, to which she said that this was her first master, which sounded simple in words, but she still did not understand how to do it. The child began to regain consciousness, and then the Duke asked if the contract could be cancelled, to which Dorian assured him that it could only be cancelled if the divine beast itself wanted it. And then she said the word "Dad," and everyone immediately looked at her, and the man asked if she had really just said something, and why she was opening her eyes so weakly, to which the cat said that it was exhaustion. She had been instantly deprived of a lot of divine power, and it was a miracle that she was alive. After a while, she woke up in her bed, and Nadia immediately started apologizing, and Dorian asked if she even realized how long she had been asleep. She was unsure and suggested that 2 days had passed, to which Dorian said that it had been 2 weeks, and he was already starting to wonder what he would do in the future if she hadn't woken up. The heroine apologized for this, to which the cat assured her that she did not need to apologize. The whole point was that Nadia had signed a contract with her and did not think to ask her consent beforehand. But now everything was in the past, so this case is probably not worth mentioning. When Ione got up, she asked if her father and Geryon were still asleep, and Dorian assured her that he had sensed that she was about to wake up, and that was why he had come to see her first thing in the morning, as he thought that after such a long sleep, she would be very eager to see him first thing in the morning. She found her father at his workplace, and he immediately ran to his daughter, asking what was hurting her and how she felt. And at that moment, Dorian appeared and confirmed that it was not a lie. Everything was fine now. The fact was that she had an incredibly high rate of recovery of divine power. After that, he asked what happened to Nadia. He meant that the girl was now her boss, so he had to be more careful with her, to which the heroine assured him that she was not her boss, but a contract partner. The man noticed that she had caused so many problems, so now he should definitely treat her as a boss. At that moment, the door opened, and Geryon ran out crying, and his sister immediately went to calm him down, asking what happened, and the maid came with him, and she explained that the boy was very worried, and often visited her while she was sleeping in the morning. He always came in, and today he came to visit her once again, and was very scared when he did not find her there. The heroine began to calm him down, assuring him that everything was fine and that he didn't need to cry anymore, as she was now completely healthy, and the brother accepted this, hugging his sister even harder. Later, sitting on the couch, she realized that something had happened to her body, not in a bad way, but in a good way. And so she told the beasts that after the contract with Nadia, she was full of strength, to which Dorian assured her that there was nothing strange about it, as the enormous use of divine power had opened the way for development. In other words, it was a reaction. Then the girl wondered if she could now use the full divine power, to which the cat explained that the fact that the divine path had opened up for her did not mean that her divine vessel had expanded, so she assumed that more divine power was needed to expand the vessel. The beast asked her not to say any more such dangerous words because this time she was just lucky, but she could still die. The luck was that she had good compatibility with Nadia, and then she wondered why, in that case, Dorian could control her calmly. The cat began to explain that Nadia was a natural element, and his element was earth, and plants could not live without earth. And hearing this, the hostess asked not to scare her new friend, to which Dorian assured that he was not mocking, but teaching everything that was needed. It was the same process as teaching Ione and Shin.